SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Every time, Rhino, nothing gets me going like some Journey. Gerard is off today. My name is Scott Sands. It's always an honor to be with you on SuperTalk Mississippi. If you have not heard me fill in before, I spent a lot of time on the coast and in Hattiesburg doing radio, so it's fun to be back on SuperTalk Mississippi, back at home. Rhino, how are you today?
Oh, not too bad for a hump day. It's We're halfway through the work week, or we're getting to halfway in the work week, so it's not Monday and it's not Tuesday, so we've made it to hump day.
I'm kind of dragging today. I think I've talked about this before, either with you or when I've filled in for Richard before, but I have a really bad habit of falling asleep on the couch. I've got a bed that's really old. I think I've had this bed since I lived in Gulfport, and I've just never gotten a new one because I never sleep in it. I always fall asleep watching TV on the couch, and when I'm ready for bed, I'll put on something mindless. It's usually like Law and Order replays on USA Network, and seriously, I in the last 6 months since I was downsized from my last job, I think I have seen every Law and Order and Law and Order SVU episode ever made at least 2 or 3 times, because that's my junk TV. That's what I'll put on when I don't want to get engaged with something or care about something or follow a plot line. It's just on in the background as background noise because I like to have something on when I'm falling asleep. I should probably get one of those sound machines. I've watched so much Law and Order, I'm now recognizing minor characters who have been a victim, a criminal, a cop, and a judge. There are some actors that have repeated over the last 25 years, and I've seen them all in all various roles. But that's last night with Law and Order SVU playing in the background, I had some weird dreams. I never remember the exact dream. I just don't. But I know I woke up about twice and was very confused. Either I was a cop or a criminal, and I'm not really sure which. But sometimes with the television playing in the background, it will seep into my brain, and I'll dream about whatever TV show is on. And it's usually a weird way to wake up in the middle of the night. I don't know if that happens to you or anybody else, but it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, that's why you don't go to sleep with like Law and Order or Criminal Intent or any true crime show, or if you go back far enough, that's why you didn't fall asleep with Unsolved Mysteries.
Right.
But then again, the music for that was part of the creepiness.
Tuesday night, I probably should have put on the History Channel and fallen asleep to The Curse of Oak Island, which have you watched the show? I've
seen bits and pieces. I have friends that are really into it, and I can't do it. I know they're never going to find it, because if they do, the show ends.
No, I have now 10 years invested into The Curse of Oak Island, and I know they have spent millions of dollars looking for this treasure that I don't really believe exists. They've found some interesting artifacts, and I think there's a remarkable history to the island and to North America that we are just beginning to learn about. And I think that's important to archaeology. It's important to history to discover those things and to figure out who may have been in North America first. But The Curse of Oak Island it's just another one of those pointless shows that I'll keep on in the background if I'm doing work on my laptop on the couch. I don't really care. That every once in a while you can catch the last 5 minutes and they'll recap what they did not find. But they have dug so many holes. At this point, just dig up the entire island. Stop trying to drill 10-foot wide holes every 3 feet. You haven't found anything that way. just take a bulldozer to it and dig until you hit water it's just one of those silly shows that I do tend to like.
Yeah, there's got to be somebody out there with some strip mining equipment that could help them out and just take like a half a mile off the top of that thing.
And the worst part of watching the show, by the way, is that if they do actually discover the treasure, the headline is going to be in the news a good year before that episode ever airs. So it's going to be so anticlimactic if they do actually find something. So I don't know. It's just for the last 10 years, I have watched this show, and I know there's really going to be no payoff. At some point, History Channel will just cancel the show, and we'll be left wondering, did they find anything in the money pit or not? It's just a waste of time, and I realize that's kind of like Naked and Afraid, some of those other shows that are just mindless garbage that I'll leave on. I should probably just listen to music or something, but instead I've got these stupid shows playing in the background that I don't really care about. But that's a weird way to start the show. This morning and this afternoon, we're going to talk about education in the state. Rachel Canter from Mississippi First will join us later this hour. State Rep Jansen Owens next hour. As well as Grover Norquist, and we'll talk about the big, beautiful bill, which is actually making some progress. Plus, I want to talk about Pete Rose and some other sports stories. But we'll kind of start with the big, beautiful bill, which actually got some votes in 3 House committees yesterday and seems to be moving forward to what is sure to be a partisan debate. The House Energy and Commerce Committee is expected to approve over $700 million in cuts to Medicaid, which, of course, will set the Democrats on fire. But much of the drama right now is behind the scenes on SALT, which is the state and local tax issue. Congressman Mike Lawler of New York told reporters that there's still a lot of work to be done. Obviously, New York is one of the states with some of the higher SALT taxes. Speaker Jansen seems optimistic about striking a SALT deal as soon as today. I thought it was notable that Speaker Jansen stopped and calmly took questions from the media yesterday. He didn't seem like someone who was worried about the Republican bill imploding, but I don't know, maybe he should be. The Freedom Caucus is always going to say that there's not enough cuts in this bill. Andy Harris of Maryland said the swamp is real. And Speaker Jansen himself acknowledged the discontent among Republicans, conservatives who want deeper spending cuts. His message yesterday was simple. In a bill as big as this, no one is going to get everything they want. I saw an interesting stat that I'll pull up on X from Stephen Moore, an economist who used to be on the White House team of economic advisors. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, projects a staggering $89.3 trillion in federal spending over the next decade. The House plan proposes a mere $1.2 trillion reduction, leading to a total of $88.1 trillion, which is a very tiny 1.5% cut. Meanwhile, the Senate suggests an almost laughable $4 billion reduction against $521 billion in increases. By 2035, the Republican Party's starvation diet still lands a whopping $10 trillion in spending, which is up from last year's $7 trillion. It's only a 40% increase instead of a 50% increase. Are we making any real progress on cutting spending? I don't think so. And I heard Richard Cross this morning talking about a conversation he either had or is having with Cindy Hyde-Smith to ask, why are you voting against some of these cuts that DOJ has recommended? If we, the people, elected you on this concept of DOJ to cut spending, you should get it done. And they're not doing that. I saw a post this morning on X from the House Republicans that said something along the lines of, we need to move the ball forward. Somebody's got to remind them that they're in charge. I realize it's a slim majority, but you've got the power to do something, and you're not doing it. One piece of the reconciliation bill would reduce a tax levied on the purchase of firearm silencers under the National Firearms Act. It would take that tax from $200 to zero. But some Republicans upset even with that because other gun regulations are still in place, which is really a lesson in the whole reconciliation process. It's the Byrd rule. In the Senate, there are stricter rules about what can be done in a budget reconciliation bill. Basically, federal spending changes are okay, tax changes okay, but policy provisions or not. For example, a minimum wage increase, immigration reforms, not allowed in reconciliation in the U.S. Senate. But
It's
back to
almost
gun
like they should
rights.
stop using reconciliation bills.
You should at some point do a budget, right? I mean, I've got to do a budget every day, every month, every year. I've got to plan what I think I'm going to be making and how much I know I'm going to spend. We have to do budgets. States do budgets, although we'll talk about Mississippi's budget next hour with Jansen Owens. You do a budget. And if you're in charge, we've had hundreds of executive orders signed by President Trump that are part of the policies that the people elected him to enact. And Congress needs to legislate them so they cannot be changed by the next guy or girl in office. And they're just not doing their job. All of this with reconciliation is sort of like what happened with the Republican efforts to undercut the Obamacare Act, the Affordable Care Act. Republicans couldn't kill the health law under reconciliation, but they could zero out the tax penalty for not having health insurance, which was just a very minor change. If we have time later, I want to talk about the MAGA account, which is included in this bill too. It's the money account for growth advancement, basically like a 529 plan for college savings to set up before a child is 8 years old. It's an interesting provision of the bill that we'll maybe get into with Grover Norquist afternoon today. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert in the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We've sent that rip.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Everybody on their feet here in Cincinnati and a worldwide television audience watching here at Riverfront Stadium. 2-1 pitch from Shaw into left center. There it is. Rose has eclipsed Cobb. That's number 4,192. For Pete Rose, this certainly his crowning achievement. And for baseball, a game that grows from its past, finds warmth in statistics. This is one of the all-time great moments.
1985, Pete Rose setting a new record. I got to be honest, Rhino, I don't remember that. I was not a huge baseball fan as a kid growing up, although I would watch it with my grandma and grandpa, watch the Braves on WTBS when I was at their house. I think you're a much bigger baseball fan than I am.
A bit. I was much bigger baseball fan when I was a younger lad following the Braves in the 90s. But, yeah, Dad would regale me with stories of Charlie Hustle from before I was born, because I was born the same year that hit took place.
So the reason why we're playing that audio is Pete Rose, as of yesterday, no longer banned from baseball, and neither is shoeless Joe Jackson. Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, reinstated them yesterday, making them finally eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame. In fact, Manfred unbanned everybody who's dead, saying, obviously a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game. Therefore, I have concluded that permanent ineligibility ends upon the passing of the disciplined individual. Okay, thanks. Rose was banned in '89 for betting on games while he was managing the Reds. Shoeless Joe and 7 other members of the White Sox were banned for fixing the 1919 World Series. So this means Pete Rose now eligible for the Hall of Fame, but the earliest he could get in is 2028. That's because their greatest contributions to baseball came before 1980, meaning they'd have to be considered by the 12-person Classic Baseball Committee, which doesn't vote again until December of 2027. Pete Rose himself has talked about the Baseball Hall of Fame and whether or not he should be in that. I think you've got that audio as well.
And putting me on the ballot after I die. Most of the people who rooted for me my whole career would love to see me in the Hall of Fame as a living player, not as someone who's 10 feet under. What good would it do my family if they put me in the Hall of Fame after I die? Because I'm the one that did the work. I'm the one that put the time in. I'm the one who was dedicated to the game of baseball. I was the one dedicated to my teammates and for the game of baseball in general. I tried to sell the game for my 24 years as a Major League Baseball player by going out there every day and busting my ass and trying to entertain the people.
I think Pete Rose is probably right. I think it's long overdue, and certainly he's done enough, accomplished enough in his career to belong in the Hall of Fame, but this is kind of a middle finger to he and his family, who should probably say pound sand at this point. I saw an interesting op-ed in ESPN by Dan Wetzel, and I think he summarizes this for a lot of people. The only reason to keep these bans was to block their path to Cooperstown, the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. The word museum is key. Museums exist to chronicle history, and history is never tidy, especially in sports. They shouldn't just showcase a polished, league-sanctioned narrative or let off-field controversies eclipse on-field brilliance. They definitely should function as a tool for rewarding or punishing behavior. Here's the big question. Do you think Rose and Shoeless Joe and the others should have done what they did? The answer is pretty clear. It's no. They should have faced legal consequences for sure. And the MLB at the time did have rights to suspend or to discipline them. For Rose, Dan Wetzel writes, I think he should have been barred from baseball operations after betting on the Reds. That was a serious breach, but it doesn't negate 4,200 hits, 3 World Series rings, 1973 MVP, 17 All-Star nods, or the Charlie Hustle moniker that you referenced earlier. And Dan Wetzel references that legendary headfirst slide, which is still being replayed today, especially. So if you look at Pete Rose overall, the gambling allegations, a 1998 guilty plea for tax evasion, which cost him 5 months in federal prison, a 2017 allegation of statutory rape from the 70s, which I'll point out never did lead to charges. There's no doubt that Rose is somewhat of a controversial figure. But as Dan Wetzel writes, it's the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's not a sainthood ceremony. It's about a great day in New York with your family. If the museum's purpose is to document baseball's history, how could you exclude Pete Rose? If the hall is for the game's greatest players, how does Pete Rose not belong? His managerial missteps shouldn't overshadow his playing career. But again, I think it's pathetic to reinstate him after his death and to deny Pete Rose the joy that he would feel being accepted into the Hall of Fame.
It also feels like this is a decision that should have been made a long time ago regarding Shoeless Joe Jackson, because it's not like it's anything new that he pretty much didn't have anything to do with it. And even the people that were accused of having anything to do with throwing the World Series, they got off legally.
And see, you know more about the history of baseball than I do. I know the story, but I don't know all the details of what happened in 1919.
Yeah, so 1919, the White Sox players, known as the Black Sox scandal, it's 8-9 guys that were accused of throwing the World Series for bookies. Well, I forget the guy's name. He was the head of MLB at that time, Landis. I can't remember his first name. But anyways,
you're over my head on that one.
He banned them for life. Just, nope, you can't play. And then in 21, they go to trial over all this because it's against the law to do that. And they were acquitted. And even back then, they were like, nope, you're still banned for life. And it's considered pretty much fact nowadays. I mean, there's very little evidence that there's around from back then, but it's pretty much considered fact that Shoeless Joe wasn't even really in the group of guys that allegedly threw it.
Right. Lindy from Gluckstadt writes on the C-Spar text line, what do you do with the drug users? I think that's a valid point, too. I mean, Barry Bonds right now is the home run king, but unless you're an idiot, you got to recognize that Hank Aaron's really the home run king. It's there. You look at that entire Barry Bonds era and know that a majority of those players were juiced. Do you put an asterisk next to their stats? If you're going to look at gambling, and Dave writes on the C-Spar text line that Charlie Hustle never bet against the Reds while he was their manager. You're absolutely right. I mean, I get it. Sports betting is a real concern and should be with players even today. We saw that, with Alabama baseball last year. It was once a major taboo, but the reality has shifted, attitudes have shifted, and now there are sports gambling bars, there are sports wagering bars inside of Major League Baseball ballparks now. Even at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, you can bet on a game while you're in the Great American Ballpark, and that to me is ironic. History is what it is. I get that. The game is the game. Museum is a museum. But you should have the complete story told. All of the greatest players, the greatest teams, the greatest moments. Now, no matter how gritty or unlawful or regrettable they may be, let history show itself in a museum, which is the purpose of a museum, and not use that ban as a punishment for something he did 40 years ago. And again, I kind of waver back and forth on this. He did do something wrong. He did violate MLB, I think it's Rule 21 on wagering while he was a player. If you work for Major League Baseball, if you work for the NFL, if you work for the NHL now, you're not supposed to bet on anything. And he violated that. Even if he didn't bet against his own team or throw any games. But at this point, you got to look at his record and say, this is a guy who deserves to have his achievements in the sport recognized and remembered. Here's what else he did. Lay it all out there in the museum and let history judge the man down the road, because people will still be talking about this guy in 100 years when it comes to baseball. Should he be in? Probably. Your thoughts, Rhino?
Oh, yeah, I think he should have been in while he was still alive. I'm agreeing with the notion that it's a museum, and I believe if you have someone that is worthy of being put in a museum while they are still alive, you should put them in while they're still alive.
More comments coming on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. I'm Scott Sands, in for Gerard Gibert. You can find me on X as well, at Scott Sands Media. We'll look at the so-called Mississippi Miracle in Education with Rachel Canter next here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert, Middays with Gerard, SuperTalk Mississippi.
How y'all doing? I'm Scott Sands, in for Gerard Gibert. In the Element Wealth Studio on SuperTalk Mississippi. You can stream us at supertalk.fm. Rachel Canter is joining me. She is executive director currently at Mississippi First. Rachel, it's great to meet you.
Hi, so nice to be here, Scott.
I saw you on the Fox News channel a couple of weeks ago, and I made a note. I took a picture of the TV and said I need to talk to her about the Mississippi Miracle, about Mississippi's growth in education. But let's start with explaining what Mississippi First is, your organization, and I know you're stepping down as executive director to move on to a new organization.
Yes, so Mississippi First is an education policy organization here in the state of Mississippi. Our mission is to improve public education for children all across the state. We've been in existence since 2008, and we worked on a wide variety of education policies in that time. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit, and our sole goal is to help school children learn more, and we've been very successful in Mississippi.
Yeah, and that's the Mississippi Miracle that everybody's looking at. In 2013, the state was ranked second worst for fourth grade reading and has now jumped to 21st as of a couple of years ago. Where else has Mississippi seen improvements in education?
We've actually seen huge improvements in math as well. So we were at the bottom of the country about 20 years ago when we first started tracking this national data, and Mississippi has moved way up the scale. We are at the national average in reading and in math, And in fact, when you adjust the data for the demographics of our students, we're actually at the top of the country.
You know, I joke sometimes when I need somebody to explain something complicated to me. Talk to me like I'm a fifth grader because I was educated in Mississippi. I may have to change that joke moving forward if we could continue to make these improvements. What's been the model for success? How has this happened?
We have done a wide variety of things here in the state of Mississippi over a long period of time to improve education. A lot of people know about our reading reforms that we put into place in 2013 with the passage of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, and then establishing all the policies that went along with it, things like putting reading coaches in schools, making sure teachers had the information that they needed to teach reading in a rigorous way, in a effective way. But what people may not know is that Mississippi has actually been changing policy and changing practice for a really long time. So back 20 years ago, we started increasing what our expectations were for children in the classroom and their teachers. And children and teachers really met that challenge. We put in new accountability policies. We put in new learning standards that were a lot more rigorous than we used to have. We've really been focused on the basics of reading, writing, math, science, social studies in Mississippi public schools, and we've not changed that focus over a long period of time. There are so many things that are being talked about in education right now, but Mississippi has always had our eye on the ball. What should children know and be able to do by the end of their grade level so that they can be successful in life?
I'm glad you mentioned accountability because that was my next question. In the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, what kind of specific accountability measures were included in that, and how can we apply that to other subjects?
Sure. So there's different accountability for both teachers and for students. A lot of people know about what we refer to as the third grade gate, which essentially means that students have to make a minimum level of proficiency on their third grade reading test in order to be promoted to the fourth grade. So you don't have to be all the way proficient, but you have to be approaching proficiency in reading to go on to the fourth grade, with the idea that if you have reading skills that are too weak, you will continue to struggle not only in the fourth grade, but throughout your school career. And we need to intervene in that child's education as soon as possible to help them get up to grade level so that they can be successful later on. We also put in new policies to require teachers to take an additional licensure test. So teachers now in the state of Mississippi, if they want a K through 3 license, they have to prove that they know the science of reading in order to become a teacher who can teach kids how to read. That may seem very basic, but that was not the case before all of our literacy reforms. Those are a couple of the things that we've done. We've also held schools more accountable by having a more rigorous, more transparent accountability system in how we grade schools overall. So parents can now look at the letter grade, A through F, of their child's school and know whether or not kids in that school are getting what they deserve.
I want to circle back to the teachers in a minute, but how important is parental involvement, especially in literacy and math?
Certainly, parents play an enormously important role in their child's education from when they are very, very young, before they even start school, all the way to when they graduate high school. There are a lot of things that parents can do to support literacy. It starts even when they're babies by talking to them, making sure that they are hearing words, and making sure that we are engaging with babies so that they return, if you talk to them, that they're babbling back to you, reading to them as children and continuing to read to them even as they enter school. Because the more vocabulary a child knows, that really increases their ability to read later on, because we not only need phonics to know how to decode words, but we need to have a vocabulary to know what they mean and to make meaning out of books. So parental support is really important. And one of the things the Literacy-Based Promotion Act did was require that schools tell parents honestly whether or not their child was on track to learn to read.
So with parents as perhaps the primary stakeholder in education, how important does the school choice debate become in the state?
Well, I think that for a long time we've been having different conversations about how to ensure that parents have a voice in their child's education, because parents should have they must have a voice in their child's education. And we want to make sure that they are able to choose a school that's right for their children. At Mississippi First, since we're focused on public schools, one of the issues that we've been focused on is public school choice. So making sure that we have a charter school law in the state of Mississippi and that charter schools can expand in places where parents don't have great options in their traditional public schools. We have a very small charter school sector here in Mississippi. We have about 10 operating schools. That law was also passed in the same year as the Literacy-Based Promotion Act. And honestly, the Mississippi legislature needs to do more to encourage and support that sector because it is so small and not enough parents have public school choices.
So I want to come back to the teachers for a moment. We're talking to Rachel Canter, Executive Director at Mississippi First. What role, if any, now in Mississippi has teacher merit or performance-based initiatives played in these gains in education of the state?
I think our teachers work really, really hard, and they're certainly not doing it for the money because we do have some relatively low teacher pay here in the state, although the legislature did put a historic commitment into teacher pay in 2022, recognizing that our teachers deserve to earn a living wage. However, we do have some important policies for teachers. We have these licensure tests where they have to take a test to ensure that they have the content knowledge to be able to teach kids what they need to know. We don't have a statewide performance pay plan. We pay teachers the same way many states pay teachers, which is based on your years of experience and the types of degrees that you have. There's been some evidence that paying teachers based on their effectiveness can improve teacher retention. And that is certainly something that we struggle here in Mississippi. But Mississippi does have the highest supplement for teachers who get something called the National Board Certification, which is a national certification that says, yeah, you're a really good teacher and we should pay you more.
So as you're looking at this, I think one of the biggest problems in education we face today is recruiting teachers. There's a national teacher shortage that perhaps changing some of these pay-based incentives could attract new people into the occupation.
I think that the issue of teacher compensation is pretty complicated because you certainly have a certain number of people who look at the teaching profession and decide, I can't make enough money to sustain a family, I can't make enough money to buy a house, and they may not even go into a college of education in the first place. So we're losing some portion of potential teachers just because they're looking at it and saying, I can't afford to pay off my student debt if I get a teaching degree and I can't afford to live as a teacher. But then there's another portion of teachers who do go into the profession, who do get licensed, and then after several years in the profession, they decide, I can't afford a house, I can't afford to raise a family, I need to go find something to do with myself. And research that we've done at Mississippi First has shown that we're actually at higher risk of losing people kind of in that 6 to 10 year period of teachers. So there are teachers who have several years of experience under their belt, they're just starting to hit their stride, but they're also young enough that they're looking at, is this really what I want to do as a career? And that was a lot of why we passed the teacher pay raise in 2022. But I'm sure you'll remember that that was also a year of historic inflation. And so we passed that teacher pay raise, and then it went right out the window after that horrible summer where we had 10 percentage point inflation. So we really have to, it's something that you really have to keep working at over time as a legislature and as a state.
We've got limited time here, and hopefully you'll stick around for another segment. And this is kind of a loaded question, Rachel, but is there a danger of union influence diluting Mississippi's educational reforms?
Well, that is certainly something that I can talk about. However, as you may know, Mississippi is a right-to-work state. So we don't have collective bargaining here in Mississippi for our teachers' organizations. We call them teacher professional organizations because they cannot collectively bargain. I think the greater risk is people becoming complacent. We've had such tremendous success, and unfortunately, the perverse consequences of success can be people let their foot off the gas.
Speaking of letting your foot off the gas, you wrote an op-ed that we'll talk about in just a second. Rachel Canter, she's the executive director at Mississippi First. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Patriotism.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
And we'll be back tomorrow. My name is Scott Sands, and you can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Rachel Canter is joining us on SuperTalk Mississippi, Executive Director now at Mississippi First. He wrote an op-ed a couple of weeks ago or last week about in the Magnolia Tribune about the next steps, what we need to do in Mississippi to continue this miracle and move education forward even more. We're not going to have time in this segment to cover everything you suggest, but let's just start with extending the literacy work of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act.
Right. So we've had tremendous gains at our fourth grade level. We have had gains as well at eighth grade, but they haven't been as stunning as our fourth grade gains. And I think that's really because our work with the literacy policy has been through third grade. And then after third grade, we are mostly doing what we've always been doing. We've made changes in those middle years. We're using better curriculum. We have higher standards. But we also need to be doing some of that focused work with teachers that we did with K-3 teachers. And we need to make sure that even as kids go into fourth grade, as reading and writing gets more complex, those students who still are struggling a little bit still need support. And other students who maybe have mastered the basics need to have a little bit more support to get that deeper understanding, because we want to make sure by the time they graduate high school that reading, writing, any of these basic skills, that they don't present a barrier to wherever they want to go in life, whether that's on to college, whether that's to a career training program, whether that's to the military. All of those should be options for any child who wants them.
Yeah, the fourth grade gains are great. The eighth grade gains are nice, but need to improve along the way, too, in the rest of middle school and in high school. I just, Rachel, do not want to read Beowulf again. That was painful. The other important aspect, and you write about this in the op-ed in the Magnolia Tribune, is about math, because this is really the direction so many careers are taking, and we need to see an improvement in all of the STEM curriculum as well, and a math initiative might do that.
That's right. So if you look at our history and our data, we have improved dramatically in reading, but we've actually improved even more dramatically in math. We are not quite at the level in math that we are at in reading. And after the pandemic, we dipped a little bit in math, and we're not quite back up to the level that
I think all schools really dipped because of the pandemic and the remote learning process.
That's right. And what's remarkable about some of our reading data is that we had a smaller dip and went back to recovery faster in reading than basically any other state in the country. We've had that similar dip in math, but we haven't quite recovered to where we need to be. We also know that historically the United States has not performed as well on math assessments as other countries have. And that puts us at risk and our kids at risk of not being globally competitive. We need to make sure that kids have the fundamental basics in math before they get to high school so that they can go on to those higher level math courses they might need for wherever life may take them without needing any sort of remediation. It's a real shame when kids go to college and they can't take credit-bearing courses because they didn't learn enough math in high school, or when they get into a career tech program and they need some basic math skills for whatever it is and they don't have them because somebody didn't think it was important to teach them. We need to make sure that we are making math as important to us as literacy, and I think a statewide math initiative would do that.
So how do you make these improvements across the board in all the subject matter? Is it improving the instructional materials, changing up the syllabus? Is it more support for teachers, better resources for the kids?
We've done a variety of things already in Mississippi to sort of build that foundation. So it starts with, what do we expect of kids? We have to be expecting that they learn rigorous content. And then we have to be measuring that with good assessments and a good accountability system. But teachers need the materials to be able to teach to those rigorous standards. Otherwise, they're going to teach either what they were taught in school or what they've always taught and not necessarily teach to that higher level. So we have to make sure that teachers have access to high quality instructional materials, that if they need coaching or professional development, that we are providing that through our state Department of Education or on the district level. We need to make sure that the state as a whole is focused on making sure and measuring those outcomes. Are we giving the teachers what they need to teach? Are we supporting the students who struggle through tutoring or other methods? And are we measuring our success to keep ourselves honest about whether or not we are getting kids the education that they deserve?
Great questions coming in on the C-Spire text line as well. Where do some of the other subjects fit into this plan, like history or civics and government? That's also important. I don't know that it necessarily helps with possible career paths, but it's certainly an important part of a well-rounded education.
Absolutely. And as a person who was a double major in college in English and history, history is really important to me.
And you still found a job.
I did. I actually was a classroom teacher before I went to policy school and started Mississippi First. And I think history and learning history is really important for our students to be able to be the American citizens that we want them to be. They need to understand this country's founding, our founding documents like our Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all of those things to understand their place in the world and how America is different and unique in world history than other countries. I think that the more that kids learn about American history in particular, the prouder that we can be of the ideals on which our country was founded, and the better we can live up to them today.
10 seconds here. What's your 5-year goal for the state of Mississippi?
Well, I want to continue to be number one. I want our kids to be at the level where they're competing with the best of the best in the country and in the world. And I don't want anyone else to ever have a reason to make Mississippi part of the joke when we're talking about education.
Rachel Canter, Mississippi First, here on Middays with Gerard Gibert. I'm Scott Sands, SuperTalk Mississippi. Rachel, thanks for coming in. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Jansen Owens joins us in studio next.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
How y'all doing? Honor, thrill to be here for Gerard Gibert. He'll be back tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow, Gerard will be in Lowndes County for the unveiling of the Cinco Mega Site, a new development project that's going to be a huge economic boon for the Golden Triangle. It's brought to you by the Golden Triangle Development Link. We're in the Element Wealth studio today. Are you thinking about it? We're planning for retirement. Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. You can find me on X. I am at Scott Sands Media. Rhino during the break telling me that Jansen Owen, State Rep Jansen Owen, is in the building, wandering around somewhere. We'll get him on with us in just a second. Some great comments coming in to Rachel Canter on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. Scott and Clinton sent a text that said, want to raise math scores, teach math the way we learned 40 years ago. And I don't really understand the new math or the Common Core math, but I've seen a lot of examples, and you're right, it doesn't make sense to me. I can usually solve at least somewhat basic math problems in my head. I asked her the question about government and civics questions. Janet in North Mississippi asking how the county schools can get more teachers to work with dyslexia students. I think that's an important question to ask, as we have so many special needs children, and in some, especially in rural communities, there may not be the resources or the teachers who have the experience to be able to help that developmental growth. And someone also asking about cursive. I don't know that I realized, and maybe this is not true everywhere, but asking about why they no longer teach cursive writing in schools. Is that a thing? I mean, maybe. I know my cursive is horrible. I used to have terrific penmanship, and not really something to be proud of, but I used to write really nicely and took great care in writing. And then at some point, I think maybe in college, when we had to take so many more notes, my handwriting just absolutely is horrible. And today, if you're watching on supertalk.fm on the video stream, I don't even have written notes anymore. I type everything because it gets so bad, Rhino, that at some point I can't even read my own handwriting.
Well,
and I'll write in the block letters.
Cursive was obsolete by the time I was coming through, and we learned it in first, second, or third grade, and the only real use for cursive lettering in today's day and age is to know how to sign your name, and even then,
Right. Even then,
there's
really
so much. You have so much leeway in your signature that it's not following any of the rules of cursive writing. It's kind of like, why don't we teach typewriter? Because there's a very distinct way to type on a typewriter compared to typing on a keyboard for a computer. They are two different typing skills. So why don't we teach that? Oh, it's an obsolete form of communication.
I got to tell you, I last week, I believe, was Teacher Appreciation Week. And on my high school, on the St. John in Gulfport alumni group page on Facebook, I honored Miss Herbert, who was our history teacher at the time, and she delivered our commencement address when we graduated. And I republished her commencement address for Teacher Appreciation Week, and she was amazing. We had some great teachers at St. John. But I still, the teacher I should thank more often is Ms. McGuffey, who taught typing. And back when I was in high school, it was old typewriters with paper, and you had to hit the carriage return. But that has been one of the greatest skills that has followed me to this day. Yes, the math, the English, the reading skills, the science and history that I learned, fantastic. I use that every day in what I do in this kind of job. But the typing skills is something I use every day, and would not be able to keep up with notes, to write proposals, to write recaps and reports, and nearly as quickly as I'm able to, thanks to those typing skills that I learned way too long ago. If that's not a required piece of curriculum in school, along with the other aspects of computer science that you mentioned, because typing on a computer keyboard much different than a typewriter, absolutely. You should learn how to code. You should learn artificial intelligence in high school. Don't cheat on your essays, but learn how to type. That is something that everybody will need moving forward. And I don't know what the requirements are today, to be perfectly honest, but thank you, Ms. McGuffey, for teaching me how to type. I think in high school, on a typewriter, I made it up to like 75 words a minute. I don't think I'm that fast today, but certainly an important skill. Have we found State Rep Owen? Is he just
Still
wandering
no
around?
sign of him.
But he's in the building.
I swear I heard him talking to the program director. So if you're listening, Will, where are y'all?
Will's like, I'm going to mess with Scott's show and throw off his entire rundown for the day. We'll talk to Brad Meltzer next hour. He's an author. He's been on with me before when I've filled in. He's got a new book out called We Are the Beatles, and it's also graduation time. So many schools are graduating this time of year. He was on with us last time talking about his commencement address at the University of Michigan, which has become another one of his new books called Make Magic. With graduation, I don't know if you're on TikTok or any of those other social platforms. I know we follow each other on X, but have you seen? And I have serious FOMO that we didn't do this when I was in high school. Have you seen Senior Splashin'? Have you seen that at all?
No.
So this is apparently some game, and it's an app that you can sign up for in schools. It's probably not sanctioned by the schools themselves, but you sign up. You can do a free for all. What's called in Call of Duty when every man is for himself? What's that called? Do you know?
I think it's free for all. Yeah.
Or some battle royale. Rumble. I don't know. There's a term for it. I can't remember what it is. Where you're out for yourself, or you can play in teams, and you get water guns, and you go around and try to assassinate your target that you're assigned randomly on the app with a water gun. And there are all sorts of rules on when you can't do it. I guess you probably can't do it inside of a classroom. It stops at a certain time at night. But there have been all these videos I've seen on Instagram and TikTok of kids staking out their target, trying to. You could wear like goggles or a floaty, and that gives you immunity that makes you safe, so you can't be hit with a water gun. It looks like a lot of fun. And I think there was, like in the 80s or 90s, I think there was a movie similar to this where they were using dart guns, not like actual darts, but the suction cup dart guns. And I think it was called Tag. Maybe I'm making this up, but I think that would have been a lot of fun to play in high school. And I wish that we would have had that when I was in school. It seems like a lot of fun. It's probably quite disruptive, but let's have some fun and give kids a reason to, get outside and away from the computer for a little while.
It sounds like a safer, more plausible campus game than. Have you ever seen the TV show Community?
Yeah, bits and pieces. I didn't watch. I never really watched it regularly, but I have seen it.
Well, they have one of those keynote episodes or whatever they call them, where it's not necessarily the finale, but you can tell they put a lot into it, or it may have been a finale. But either way, they had an episode or a couple episodes where the entire campus devolved into a paintball war.
Oh, nice.
With teams forming and factions and all that kind of craziness, and people taking it very seriously.
That sounds like fun, although paintballs certainly hurt more than water pistols, or darts for that matter.
Oh,
I know I've played on a paintball team when I lived in Hattiesburg.
Yeah, you get some of those things cranked up, they sting a bit.
So I just sent State Rep Jansen Owen a text saying, "Hey, where you at? You want to pop in and come hang out for a few minutes? We'll see if he responds." I didn't have a chance to mention this when we were talking about Pete Rose earlier in the hour, but another big sports story: Livy Dunn making the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. She has just become this sensation over the last couple of years. Her time at LSU and gymnastics done, but with her and Paul Skeens dating, I mean, she seems like a natural, lovely young fit for the SI swimsuit edition that I'm sure will get a lot of attention in the area. Have you seen her cover yet?
Oh, yeah. Kind of, I don't know.
I've only seen it in glancing. I made a note on the show rundown that she was on the cover, but I don't know that I've.
I just feel like there could have been a more flattering pose for her physique.
Okay, see, now I've got to pull it up now and listen. I didn't want to be the 50-year-old perv who was stalking Livy Dunn on the swimsuit edition. Although, when I was younger, that was a great magazine to get at the time. We'll see if we can track down Jansen Owen and get him in here next segment. It's Middays with Gerard Gibert from the Element Wealth Studios. I'm Scott Sands on SuperTalk Mississippi.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Without fail, whenever I sit in for Gerard or Richard, there's always at least one hiccup. We're experiencing that now as we're trying to track down State Rep Jansen Owen. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert on the SuperTalk Mississippi in the Element Wealth Studio. Amanda from Pike County sent a text on the C Spire text line that said maybe it's Melee that we're thinking of with from Call of Duty. I think actually, because I looked this up, the term I was looking for is Team Deathmatch, which if you're going to throw that phrase around in school, you're probably going to send up some red flags. So I don't think it's called that on Senior Splashin'. Brian and Madison said that they call it Senior Assassins. Again, it looks like a lot of fun to play. Dan in Hattiesburg, as we were talking about teachers, said the only reason I took typing was because the teacher was new, a recent grad that just happened to be a cheerleader at State. There may have been two other women in the class. I did find it useful in college, though. Absolute Battle Royale. Thank you, Mike in Columbus. Battle Royale is what it's called on the Senior Splashing game. And I don't know if they charge to download the app and play the game, but it seems like a good way to end the school year and let off some steam. I did look up the Livy Dunn Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover, and I think I understand your points, Rhino, that maybe not the most flattering pose, but
everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and they just did not highlight her strengths as much as her weaknesses.
I remember a couple of years ago there was a controversy, and I use that term loosely because it seems like everything becomes a controversy today of the plus size models on the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, and I didn't see the big deal about that. It may not be traditional beauty or a traditional figure for an SI swimsuit, but I saw she was also a lovely lady. I don't see, and as a fat kid myself, although I've lost 100 pounds in the last 15 months, I don't think we should be body shaming anything. I don't know that would have been my first choice either. I'm just surprised, and I'm thankful that Bill Belichick's model girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, was not the cover pick, or that would have sent her ego flying even more. I think she is doing, I think she and Bill Belichick are doing an interview maybe Friday morning on one of the news shows that I'm sure will stir up some new controversy about that relationship. And I saw something about her being barred from UNC football practice because of her involvement with Belichick. And there was a rumor online on X that she turned down Dancing with the Stars. Again, would have just fed her ego in social media. I got a text back finally from State Rep Jansen Owen. Apparently, there's some confusion over the time. He's not there yet. So that wasn't Jansen that you heard in the hallway. We may try to get him on the phone here at the bottom of the hour. As we talk about the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition, I saw that Senator Mike Lee is introducing a bill that would make porn a federal crime. Did you see the story yesterday?
No.
So this may be a controversial opinion, and as I fill in for Gerard and Richard, sometimes I hesitate to share my opinions on some controversial things because you don't know me well. I've sat in off and on for the last 2 or 3 months, and you don't know and understand or have heard everything that I believe in as far as morals, values, law, politics. But I'm somebody who does cherish the Constitution, and frankly, somewhat alarmed by Mike Lee's bill. It's called the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, which would criminalize pornography by redefining obscenity for the internet age. And look, don't get me wrong, porn raises some serious moral questions. I personally share concerns about its impact on families, kids, relationships, but I do believe in liberty, and I believe banning porn federally could be a dangerous misstep. Porn, if you like it or not, is, in my opinion, kind of a canary in the coal mine for free speech. If we let the government silence it, we risk losing our own voice tomorrow. So this bill, the IODA, along with Congresswoman Mary Miller, will protect society by empowering prosecutors to target content deemed obscene, defined as material appealing to prurient interest in sex, depicting sexual acts to arouse, and lacking serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. The bill, they claim, is about shielding kids from harmful material. And Mike Lee himself says obscenity isn't protected by the First Amendment. Mary Miller calls the bill a tool to safeguard American families. And look, I get it. Their intentions may be noble, but you've often heard it said that the road to censorship is paved with good intentions. And so here's why I'm against the bill in theory. It's because it threatens the First Amendment, which, in my opinion, is the bedrock of our republic. And I know you have only known me for a few months, but I've spent years railing against cancel culture and big tech's censorship of conservative voices. So if we cheer when the government is going to ban porn, we're handing bureaucrats a playbook to target any speech that they dislike. The bill's definition of obscenity is so vague, in my opinion, that it could ensnare classic literature, religious texts, maybe even a podcast or a radio show. So if we're going to let DC decide what's harmful, in my opinion, we're inviting the next administration to label maybe pro-life ads or the Second Amendment as obscene, because free speech isn't just for ideas we love, it's for the ones we hate too. And porn can test that principle. And if it fails, so could everything else. It's not just about theory, it's a slippery slope. Look at the authoritarian regimes of China, Iran, North Korea. They started by banning immoral content, and then they moved on to political dissent. And I've seen I think we've all seen how the left can twist vague laws to silence conservatives, labeling our posts on social media as misinformation, deplatforming us, demonetizing us. So if this act passes, what could stop a future progressive administration from using it to censor a church sermon or a blog on traditional values? Porn is, as much as you may despise it, a canary in the coal mine, a warning that once the government gets a taste for censorship, that it's not going to stop there at adult content. I believe, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, that it should be about personal responsibility over government overreach. I'm a parent, and I get it. Keeping kids away from inappropriate material is tough, but that should be our job as parents and not Washington's. We've got tools like content filters, parental controls, honest conversations we should be having with our kids about right and wrong. I personally don't feel a need for a federal ban to raise a family, and I don't trust Washington to decide what's safe for my kids, even if they may be well-meaning. A one-size-fits-all law like this strips away our freedom as parents as we see fit and could hand it to faceless bureaucrats, and that's not the way it should be in a free market. The adult industry, as much as you may despise it, is a legal multi-billion-dollar sector. If you ban it, if you say it's a crime, it will just go underground. It'll create black markets that are harder to regulate and potentially even more dangerous. I believe in economic freedom and innovation, and overregulating a lawful industry stifles both while doing little at the end of the day to address the root issues. If we truly want to protect kids, let's focus on enforcing existing laws and promoting better tech solutions and not just torching an entire sector like this. There's also a political cost to this. This bill from Mike Lee may seem like a win for conservative values, but it could also backfire. There's a lot of ethical red flags it raised, and it could fuel even accusations of hypocrisy. If we as conservatives are going to decry censorship when it targets us, but cheer it when it hits content we dislike, it's a double standard that hands ammunition to critics and alienates voters who will see through the inconsistency. There's also a pretty high enforcement cost of this, billions of dollars to police the internet, and that clashes with the concept, although we're not seeing it from Congress lately, for fiscal restraint. And don't get me wrong, I'm not defending porn's morality. It's a tough issue, and I wrestle with its place in society, but I know that freedom comes with hard choices, and I don't believe that we should sacrifice the First Amendment to fix a cultural problem. We can't trade personal responsibility for government control, and we can't risk our principles for a short-term win. I think we should be protecting our kids through families and communities and not censorship, and let that canary sing. If it dies, our liberties might be next. I'm Scott Sands on X at Scott Sands Media. Some texts coming in on the C-Spire text line about this now at 601-879-4395, and for Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Whiskey makes my baby. Back roads are bogging up, my buddies pile up in my truck. We hunt our honeys down, we take them into town, start washing all our worries down the drain. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing.
From the Seabird.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
And for Gerard Gibert, Middays, I'm Scott Sands. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Full disclosure, my fault, I screwed up. State Rep Jansen Owens. You see, in full transparency, I'm on Eastern Time currently, and I don't know where I got lost in translation on time. Jansen Owens is on time, for the wrong time, but we're trying to work that out for next hour. Rhino, as Gerard talked about the Boeing 747 that Qatar wants to give the United States as a gift to serve as the new Air Force One. I've been listening to him off and on this week, but I didn't hear him talk about the Air Force One gift from Qatar, where President Trump is today.
Yeah, we spoke about it briefly. He's a bit hesitant on it.
Yeah.
And his reasoning for being hesitant, or at least one of his reasons for being hesitant, is if the shoe was on the other foot and this was a gift to Biden, he believes people would be losing their mind.
Yeah,
and my response to that was, because I think people are just fed up with the only major airline manufacturer in the United States left being so bumbling and incompetent and worried about the wrong crap that they can't produce a plane.
2 planes.
Well, they don't even have one.
They don't have
one. They've been contracted to make Air Force One. It was supposed to be due last year. They're way over budget, way behind schedule. The Air Force Ones that are currently flying are 4 decades in service. If somebody wants to give you something it's a plane that was made here in America that they've been using that they no longer need, I get there's legalese and nonsensical 200-year-old arguments that are going to get wound up in it, but on the face of it, I don't see the problem.
Well, first of all, I mean, obviously this is kind of a thumb your nose at Boeing for not being able to deliver on time and on budget, but it's also a problem with government contracts that it's going to exceed budget. And President Trump 4 years ago worked out a pretty good deal with Boeing to reduce the cost of the new Air Force Ones. Here's what I find most humorous about the debate. And I get it. You can involve the emoluments clause all you want. You can talk about whether or not it should be gifted to the Trump Presidential Library when he leaves office for his use, which I think he has said, whether you believe him or not, I think he has said that he wouldn't be flying around in it. He's got his own opulent plane that he can use at his own discretion. There's a good chance, even if the United States accepts this 747, that Donald Trump is never actually going to fly in the 747 from Qatar. Do you know everything that's involved with retrofitting that airplane? First of all, it's going to cost, and I asked Grok AI, the XAI platform. So what's the deal on this? You got to make it safe. You got to make sure there are no bugs. You got to make sure the wiring is good and secure for telecommunications. You've got to absorb it from a nuclear impact. All of the safety concerns. And Grok says that the cost to retrofit $350 million to $1 billion. So Congress is going to have to appropriate the money to do that, and the costs could even exceed $1 billion. Maybe Grok says maybe even $2 billion or more if they're going to have to actually rebuild the plane from the ground up. Essentially, gut it out, take everything out of it. The retrofitting itself could cost 2 times to 5 times the plane's current value of $400 million. You've got to install encryption, multi-frequency comms systems, satellite communications. It's got to function as a command and control center. It's got to have whatever countermeasures that are top secret to protect from surface to air and air to air missile systems. You've got to have security checks. And that's it's not something that could be done next month. I mean, this is a 2-year-long project. And as we've already seen with Boeing building the 2 Air Force One planes they were contracted to build, chances are they're not going to get that done on time or on budget either. So there's this entire debate about the plane and Donald Trump being able to fly around in this palace in the sky, but there's a good chance he won't even set foot in it as Air Force One. So it negates the entire argument against it. But I would agree, and I don't know if this came into Gerard or Richard's arguments for or against accepting the plane either, but even though Qatar may be acting as an ally, they're a nation which has supported terrorist organizations in the past. I think I heard Senator Kennedy from Louisiana on one of the news shows this morning saying we should trust Qatar about as much as we trust a truck stop bathroom. So I thought that was a great way to put it. Should we take it? Why not? It's a $400 million gift, but it's going to cost us 4 times that much and still take 2 or 3 years to retrofit it, to upgrade it. Significant time and security challenges involved. You got a question as we're arguing about Republicans not acting to cut spending as much as we would like to see them. All of a sudden, you got a new $2 billion expense to retrofit this plane when you got 2 planes that are on the factory line now. Should they have been delivered a year ago? Yeah, they're behind schedule. We should probably have a plane for Air Force One that's more modern than a 40-year-old plane that first took to the sky during the Reagan administration. But there are other questions, and the appearance of impropriety, I think, should come into play on this, especially if you look at some of the other things the president is doing. And I say this with full support of President Trump as somebody who voted for him 3 times. You've got this gift. You've got the new Trump resort opening in Qatar. So whether there's any ties to that or not, there's the potential appearance of impropriety. You got the whole debate over the controversy around the Trump meme coin and him having dinner with the biggest holders of the Trump meme coin. I think these are scars or blemishes that he doesn't need right now when he's doing so much good. Does that make sense at all?
A little bit, but it feels like it takes away from where the negative attention should be put, and that's firmly at the feet of Republican Congress people who can't get off their butts and do something. They've put 5 bills on the president's desk this whole freaking time. Do your job.
It's embarrassing. And, they've got the whole big, beautiful bill, which we'll talk about next hour with Grover Norquist, but they have done nothing. And they have fought some of the things that President Trump wants to do along the way. This is not a debate we should be having. And it's another controversy created by Donald Trump, who's moving so fast that Democrats are on their heels trying to argue against everything that he does, that this is, maybe it's just another distraction. And maybe it's just another way to keep Democrats distracted from what's coming in the so-called big, beautiful bill. And maybe that's part of the chess that President Trump is playing. Take the plane. We might as well have another one after Boeing delivers these 2. I don't think President Trump should be able to use it personally after leaving office. It should stay with the government. It should stay with the Department of Defense and not go to his presidential library. If we're going to spend $1 billion to retrofit and make it secure, make it modern, state-of-the-art, then let's continue to use it and have a backup. And I'm not an aviation expert, but some of these, especially this, is such a bigger 747 that there may be some airports, runways that the president wants to travel to that would be too small for a larger plane like this to land. And again, I don't know all the specifications of Air Force One, but that's just something else to keep in mind. And the pilots do an amazing job. You've seen video, I'm sure, of some of their takeoffs and landings from small runways and small airfields. Take the gift, retrofit it, keep it in our arsenal as another plane at the disposal of the administration president, even after President Trump leaves office. So it's just another unwelcome controversy that's distracting from all of the good the president is doing on the border and with trade and tariffs and things like that. A big story, if you've ever been to a concert, you've probably been upset about all of the added fees on your ticket cost. As of this week, the Ticketmaster junk fees are now more transparent. We've complained about these for a long time. Ticketmaster's chief operating officer said Ticketmaster has long advocated for all-in pricing to become the nationwide standard so fans can easily compare prices across all ticketing sites. Basically, you're still going to be paying outrageous amounts for big concerts, even small concerts in some cases, compared to what we used to pay to go see a show. You'll just now know all of those fees in advance. And Ticketmaster also says it's going to give customers real-time updates as you're waiting in line online to buy tickets. If your wait time exceeds 30 minutes, you'll know what tickets may be available, whether new events have been added. So at least buying tickets may become a more pleasurable experience, especially if you've ever tried to get tickets to some of these big shows like Jelly Roll or Taylor Swift in the last couple of years. So the junk fee's now more transparent. Doesn't mean the costs are coming down. You'll just know in advance what you're going to pay for a ticket price. Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert in the Element Wealth Studios on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Poly up a miss.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Thanks for some of the comments on the C Spire text line. Someone on the coast sent a message that said this is only an issue with the media, talking about the gift of the 747 from Qatar. Writes, only an issue with the media. Trump already promised it's not his personal plane. I got to be honest. I've seen a couple of conflicting reports on whether or not he would have access to the plane. It's donated to the Trump Presidential Library when he leaves office. Again, I think that might be the only time he could use it, because there's no way that they would get it retrofitted in time. In fact, another comment coming from, I think, Scott and Clinton said the retrofitting would be done by Boeing. Maybe it's just me. How about Boeing just finish the planes they've already been paid for? Right? That seems to make sense.
I'll take a different angle on it, just to kind of outside the box angle that I haven't seen anybody else really take, because nobody in mainstream media wants to admit that their heroes on the left are just as crooked as they think the people on the right are. Would you rather have a gift given to the people of America through the President of the United States be out in the open, and then you got to figure out all the legal framework for how you get it done? Or would you rather every time a politician goes to a foreign country, visits with their dignitaries, they get all kinds of swag and nonsense that they never tell the public about and you never know about?
Well,
and it's just as illegal.
It's just as illegal. Members of Congress are supposed to report any gift they receive in excess of $50.
Right.
Whether they all do that, that's up for debate, and there are obviously ways to hide that as well. I mean, we're just talking about reducing the cost of prescription drugs, the president CEO a few days ago. Look at how much PAC money, campaign money, the members of Congress have received. I mean, even Republican members have $500,000 in donations coming from Big Pharma. So obviously, they're not going to be in any rush to legislate that executive order either, and I wonder why. It's the amount of corruption in what we do, Rhino, and I don't know if TeleSouth has these same rules, but I know at the last radio company I worked for, if we were taken to dinner by a record company, or if we received concert tickets from a record company, there were 3 or 4 pieces of paperwork we had to fill out for compliance on payola plugola rules. We had to, oftentimes over a certain value, we had to get prior approval from somebody above our level of management to even go out to have dinner with somebody who is promoting us on a song, on an artist. And it should be some of the same regulations for members of Congress who are passing the laws that we live under. There should be more transparency, yet they're not going to regulate themselves to make it more complicated and more difficult for them to accept that outside money. What was the tweet you told? I saw this earlier and replied to it on X from the House Republicans.
Oh yeah, they put out some tweet that just really shows how out of touch the Republicans in the House are with reality. When they tweeted out yesterday at like 1:15ish, we need to get Americans off the sidelines. Americans got off the sidelines and put you in a majority. Do your job.
Somebody tell them that they are actually in charge right now. They should do something. off the C-Spire text line. What about Hunter Biden in Ukraine? Yeah, just as corrupt. Absolutely. I'm not saying what this whole plane thing, which really should not be a controversy to begin with, is a bigger problem than the Ukrainian money that the Biden family received, or the paintings that Hunter Biden was paid for. It's all a sham, man. I got like 2 minutes here before top of the hour in Fox News, SuperTalk Mississippi News. Just to lighten the mood for a second, the World Video Game Hall of Fame announced its class of 2025. Are you a gamer, Rhino?
A bit, yeah.
What do you play?
A little bit of everything. I've dabbled in World of Warcraft. I've played a lot of Halo. I've tried my hand at Call of Duty and the Battle Royales like Fortnite and stuff like that. Not really my bag. But then again, I also love booting up a retro game and playing something like Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VII or something like that. I mean, I've yet to meet a game I couldn't play for a little bit and enjoy. It's just how long it can keep my attention.
I'd like to get back into Call of Duty. I haven't played that in years. Now I think the only video game I play is Golden Tee. The class of 2025 World Video Game Hall of Fame inductees: Defender, loved that game in the 80s. Quake, which was a follow-up to Doom in the late 80s. GoldenEye 007, one of the best-selling Nintendo 64 games. And Tamagotchi, the digital pet from the mid-90s. Defender absolutely belongs in the Video Game Hall of Fame. I can't speak to the other ones because I never had a Tamagotchi. I never played GoldenEye or Quake, so I don't know if they were any good, if they're deserving or not.
GoldenEye and Quake both deserve to be there because they were innovators in the first-person shooter. Without them, you would never have had Call of Duty.
Really? Okay. See, I stopped playing video games at some point, I think, in the 90s. Angry Birds, Call of Duty 4, Frogger, Golden Tee, Harvest Moon, Mattel Football, and NBA 2K did not make the cut this year. A couple of good ones in there, including Golden Tee, which is the only one I play now. I'm still not very good at it, but I will play that at the bar downstairs. We'll be joined by Brad Meltzer. His new book is We Are the Beatles, and State Rep Jansen Owen is rescheduled for next hour as well. It's Middays with Gerard Gibert. I'm Scott Sands on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Your home. And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Gerard will be back tomorrow. In fact, he'll be in Lowndes County tomorrow. The Golden Triangle Development link for the unveiling of the Cinco mega site tomorrow. I'm Scott Sands. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Thanks for letting me sit in. Last time we talked to our next guest, Brad Meltzer, it was about his book, Make Magic, and it is graduation time for so many schools, and his amazing commencement address at Michigan, which we'll get to in a minute, but he's joining us now to talk about a new book as part of the Ordinary People Change the World series, We Are the Beatles. Brad, it's great to have you back on. Always good to talk with you. Sorry the video link isn't working. I miss seeing your big, beautiful head.
You know, I tried, but it said, this is a virus, you're going to get slaughtered, and so, I can't fall for such tricks.
No, don't let some radio DJs trick you into downloading a virus.
I know. I was ready for it. I was looking forward to seeing you, and they said, no, I should just do audio. I said, whatever you say. They said they had problems with the link, so here I am.
All right, so Ordinary People Change the World is an amazing series of books for kids with inspiring characters. How did you pick the Beatles this time?
As you know, this was a book series that I picked for my own kids to give them better heroes to look up to, heroes of kindness and compassion and teach them perseverance. And look at the world we're in right now, right? I was like, how do I teach my kids the power of coming together? Come together. It's the Beatles' greatest lesson. And so the I Am series did its first We Are book, and We Are the Beatles was born right there.
So come together is an important message from the Beatles, but also never let a woman tear apart a money machine.
Exactly right.
So you talk about the early struggles and persistence of them as a band, which is a great message, a very uplifting message for the kids that you're targeting, like 5, 10-year-olds.
And that's it. We all see the Beatles as this kind of amazingly formed. They're perfect in every way, and they're the greatest band who ever lived, depending on what your musical tastes are. But what I want my kids to learn about them is they started like as kids. When John Lennon and Paul met, and when John Lennon was 17, Paul is 15, and George Harrison is 14 years old, and they start making music, and God, they're terrible. No, they're bad. And no one wants them to play. In fact, they can't even get hired in Liverpool anymore. And eventually they say, okay, we're going to go work in Germany. That's the only place that will book them. And Germany says you can play here, and they play basically 1,100 hours over the course of a year. That's not just practice, but playing in front of people for over 3 hours every single day for almost a year. And the result is that's how they become the Beatles. It's the practice. It's the hard work. Like, yeah, you may have some gifts and you maybe have some talent, but if you don't work, hard work will always outwork, anything else. And I want my daughter to have that lesson. I want my sons and my niece and my nephew to have that lesson, to show them that that's how you become the Beatles. It's working for it.
This series is really about inspiring kids to dream big, and we talked about that with Xavier Riddle. How does We Are the Beatles encourage these younger readers to pursue their passion and still stay grounded and discipline and that hard work ethic you were talking about?
Yeah, and for me, here's what it comes down to is, we all know that famous shot. Anytime you see a Beatles documentary, they cut to, the scene on Ed Sullivan, the screen goes black and white, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles." And then people start screaming, they cut to them in Shea Stadium, and there's crowds, and there's girls, and there's everything going nuts. Nice little story. It's not the real story. The real story is on the flight over, when they were coming to JFK that first time, they were terrified because they were at that point in London, but they had basically failed in the United States. Their first 3 records here had done poorly. It's their 4th record, the song called "I Want to Hold Your Hand," that on that day breaks through. But they're like, we don't know if we're going to our doom here. This may not work at all. And I want my kids to know that too. There's a moment in the book where you see John Lennon with his Aunt Mimi. And she says, John, the guitar is all well and good, but you'll never make a living at it. And at the end of the book, it tells you that John Lennon eventually buys his Aunt Mimi a house. And in that house is a plaque on the wall. And the plaque on the wall says, "The guitar is all well and good, John, but you'll never make a living at it." And I want my kids to know that lesson of perseverance too, right? That's the lesson of it. It's like you can have all these people who will tell you that you're not going to be able to do it. I had 24 rejection letters on my first book. And today's actually, I should tell you, Scott, the 28th anniversary of my first book. My very first book came out 28 years ago today. 24 people gave me rejections. There were only 20 publishers at the time, and I got 24 rejection letters, which means some people were writing me twice to make sure I got the point. And not that I'm the Beatles or anything like that, but the point is anyone who works in those creative arts, whether it's a musician, whether it's a novelist, whether it's someone on the radio, you know what it's like, right? There's going to be plenty of people telling you no. Your job is to find the one person who says yes. And we all know that sometimes that one yes can change your life.
We're talking to Brad Meltzer. We Are the Beatles. It's part of the Ordinary People Changed the World series for kids. And since we're on SuperTalk Mississippi, something I learned a couple of months ago filling in on the show, there's a tie to Mississippi on the Beatles' success as well. Vivian Clark, who was born, I believe, in Tunica, was a disc jockey, moved to Gary, Indiana, started working with a DJ in Chicago, Al Benson, and she founded VJ Records, which bought the rights to those first 2 or 3 Beatles albums and is in part responsible for bringing the Beatles to America. So there's that Mississippi connection as well.
I love that. I didn't know that detail. It's funny. Everyone, as the book has come out and We Are the Beatles hit shelves, I love that people want to buy it for their kids, but I'm more amazed at how many adults are buying it for themselves because we all seem to have a connection to the Beatles. My father-in-law was like, I live in Florida, and every single person in Florida swears that they were at the first concert that they played in Miami. It's like the place only holds X amount of, 1,000 people or a couple hundred people. I've met 1,000 people who said they were there. So it's really wonderful to see, how this group, and that's how it is, right? Books are a connection and they unlock your ideas. but music unlocks your memories. And when you hear that old Beatles song, you know, it just unlocks everything. And that's why even in the book we show kids how the songs came about. Yesterday, which we all know is one of the great Beatles songs, it was Paul McCartney wakes up one morning, he has this idea in his head for a song, but it's not called Yesterday, it's called Scrambled Eggs. Scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs. Those were the original lyrics. And him and John Lennon spent weeks trying to figure out the next lines and where it should go and how it should be. And finally, Paul's like, no, it's not scrambled eggs, it's yesterday. Love is such an easy game to play. And, you know, again, I want kids to see firsthand that art is not magic. It's hard work. It's working at that song and picking at it over and over until you get it down.
Your series, Brad, has kind of avoided controversial figures, but the Beatles had their own controversy. So how do you steer clear of that part of the Beatles' story, part of their adult lives, to focus on more universal positive values for the kids?
No, and listen, that's always the art, right? Every hero that we've ever done, and we've done, I am Amelia Earhart, I am Abraham Lincoln, I am Rosa Parks, I am Martin Luther King Jr., every person in the I Am series, we get at least one letter from someone saying, why'd you do that person? I got letters against I am George Washington, I got letters against, I mean, you name it, it's crazy. And I'm sure the Beatles will be no different. You know, someone will say, oh, they were on drugs, and oh, they got divorced, and oh, they did these things. And I don't make any excuses for any of these heroes. Of course they did. You know why? Because they're human. Every person we've written about is not perfect in any way. God's perfect. Everyone else, good luck. And so what do is, you know, we don't ignore them, and you know, but we basically try and do it in an age-appropriate way. The way we dealt with their divorces and all the you know, their wife. We did show a picture of Yoko Ono in the end. We don't say, oh, and she split up the group and people hate her for years. But we put it in there so that as a parent, if you want to explain that detail to your kid because you have an older child, have at it. But if you have a 5-year-old kid, or, you know, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid, just enjoy the book and enjoy the good parts. And
we were talking about some of those controversies earlier about Pete Rose.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, you know, Pete Rose, they clearly were waiting for him to die, right? They knew what they were doing. They knew the moment he died, they were going to do that, but they didn't want to do that. And you know what? If I were doing a book on Pete Rose, I would talk about the gambling because that's a key part of his life. I don't think that for the Beatles, the key moment of their life, you know, I think that's what you have to measure. Like, everyone has a little something in their back, you know, their skeleton in their closet, but is that the predominant thing? And to me, you know, are the Beatles perfect? Of course not. Did they say things that were completely embarrassing as they got older? Of course they did. That I wish that they could. I'm sure that they wish they could take back.
It's
but you can't
terrific series.
Ignore the fact that they're so amazing.
Ordinary People Change the World is a series for kids. We Are the Beatles, the latest from Brad Meltzer. Brad, I got like 20 seconds here. It's graduation time, as we mentioned. Last time you were on, we talked about Make Magic. Tell us about that book real quick.
Yeah, it was a commencement address I gave last year that was all about how to make magic in your life. And the speech went viral, but if you have someone graduated in your life from college, from high school, from elementary school, from anywhere, Make Magic is the best graduation gift you can buy. It's called Make Magic, the book of inspiration you didn't know you needed. And my God, we all need some inspiration right now and some magic in our lives.
Brad Meltzer, you're inspiring that speech and all of your books. Thanks for coming on. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, brother.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
In the Element Wealth studio, I'm Scott Sands, sitting in for Gerard. He'll be back tomorrow. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. State Rep Jansen Owens is joining us now on SuperTalk Mississippi. My apologies for the time confusion, but it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Wasn't an inconvenience at all. I mean, 15 minutes here and there. What's that?
You're a Southern Miss guy. I was looking at their baseball team. Are they getting the credit they deserve when you compare them to Ole Miss? What is it, a 12-game win streak right now?
Yeah, I don't think they're getting the credit they deserve, but that's usual with us. But we'll still get to the top.
So I probably lived in Hattiesburg well after you went to USM. What were the hot bars when you were there? For me, it was Senior Frog and Roper's.
Brewski's. That's the only place I went.
I don't even know what Brewski's is, but I'm glad to see Robert St. John and the Hog and Crescent City Grill are still thriving.
Yeah, they're doing great. I was at the Hog night before last, actually.
Oh, nice. Send me some crawfish from Crescent City Grill as crawfish etouffee.
Okay, I'll do that.
A lot going on in Jackson and the legislature. What's up with the tax bill? Let's just start there. Is special session needed? Is this going to get done?
Well, I hope it gets done, or else there's going to be a lot of people not getting paid on July 1st. I think the leadership's talking on both sides of the building, and I think they're making progress. I think we'll have a special session here in the next few weeks to get at least the priorities funded, so the state can keep running after July 1st. The tax bill, Speaker Gunn and current Speaker White worked for, I know, at least since I've been elected in 2019, every year we attempted to eliminate the income tax. And ultimately this year we were able to succeed in doing that. Putting money back into the pockets of Mississippians is what Republicans are supposed to want to do, and it's been a priority of the House since I've been elected for both speakers I've served under. And I was happy to see that we took a major Republican initiative, a conservative initiative, and we passed it out of both chambers this session. I think that's a huge win, not only for the House, but of course for Mississippians. The more money they earn, the more money they put back into the economy because they get to keep, the better our economy will do. So I'm excited to see exactly how that's going to impact Mississippi moving forward.
So what's the major holdup here, and what's the work through?
Oh, well, I'm not sure. I'm not in those discussions. I know there's been some talk about basically whether or not we want to do our projects bill or not do our projects bill, picking and choosing which projects. I think that's one of the holdups. Hopefully, the two sides are coming together and working that out as we move forward.
So, along with the tax decrease, the elimination of the state income tax, also needs to be spending cuts. And I've seen, follow Shad White on X. I've seen some of the cuts coming from Moj. Are you getting any pushback from these cuts and this waste, fraud, and abuse that you're finding at a state level?
Oh, we always get pushback whenever somebody calls out the bad apples in the bowl. But, most economists will say that if you want to eliminate an income tax, you have to offset it with at least some spending cuts, or else you might be setting yourself up for failure. I think the House prioritized doing that. We've been extremely fiscally responsible over the last few years. As far as the auditor's work, some of the stuff he's uncovering is absolutely ridiculous. I think the legislature will be poised to act on some of those issues moving forward with some reforms. Just recently, I know it was federal funds that he uncovered was being abused through the health department, but some of the stuff they were spending that money on and just wasting taxpayer dollars is absolutely ludicrous. So I do believe that there's going to be some movement moving forward to hold some of these agencies and some of these groups that receive our tax dollars accountable, just like they're doing up in D.C. There's no reason that you should be spending tax dollars on trips to bars and holding little parties and things like that, especially the way the economy is moving right now, increasing inflation. And we need to make sure that our tax dollars are being, one, if they have to be spent, they're being spent responsibly. But we need to be focused on trying to see how we can get those tax dollars back into the pockets of Mississippians, which is what we're doing with the tax cut.
State Rep Jansen Owen here on SuperTalk Mississippi. In D.C., when it comes to DOGE, Republicans, Democrats alike, talk a good game about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, but when it comes to actuality, there's a lot of resistance in cutting some of these programs and cutting some of the spending. It seems like some of the same things are happening at a state level. What do you do to make sure that these cuts are actually made, though? Do you just continue to call them out publicly and point them out in an effort of transparency? Does the legislature, do you need to get involved?
Well, the auditor's doing a good job of pointing it out, which is the first step, is identifying fraud, waste, and abuse, which is his job, and I think he's doing a great job doing that. But we're the appropriators. The legislature appropriates the funds to these particular agencies, so it will involve us having to look at the money we're giving these people moving into the next session, whether or not they're spending it responsibly, and what we can do to reel it in. If the auditor has identified certain agencies that are misspending some funds, then we need to do what we can to reel them in, to hold them accountable, whether it be putting some more strings, attaching some more strings, or reporting requirements to the expenditure of these funds, or just cutting them all together, saying you're not getting this money because you've proven that you can't spend it responsibly. Now, I will say a lot of these agencies, particularly I know the recent issue through the health department, I know Dr. Edney is doing good work to I know he's stepped up to the plate, and he says, we're not going to take this, and we're not going to let this happen anymore. So I know Dr. Edney is working to reel that in and put that and get that. He's new, so a lot of this happened before he came into his position, and I know he's doing good work to try and reel that misuse in. He indicates that he's passed or implemented a lot of new spending requirements for these nonprofits receiving these grants through the health department. But I will say a lot of these funds going to agencies are not even coming from the state legislature, but they're direct grants from the federal government, which is what you're seeing D.C. try to reel in through the DOGE cuts, or this money coming straight down with very few strings or very few accountability measures. So I think that's something that you're going to have to work on, not only through the state legislature, but through the D.C. guys as well.
And as we talk about cutting taxes, eliminating the state income tax, what does that do to state revenue? I think at the end of the day, long term, revenue will go up. You're stimulating the economy. But the other thing you can do is as I've talked about when I've filled in before, is pass online gaming. And that's like some numbers have suggested $40 to $80 million in potential tax revenue for the state if you just get your heads together on online gaming.
Don't even get me started on online gaming. The fact that we have not passed that, 3 years the House has passed that bill. I don't know if it's been 3 years, but I know I've voted on it at least 3 times to get it out of the House, and it's always running into issues in the Senate. Now, I will say this. The fact that we don't have online gaming is strictly a result of protectionism measures in the legislature. We are trying to protect somebody. We're trying to protect somebody's pocketbook, and we don't want to throw online gaming into the free market, where Republicans were supposed to be all about that. But apparently we have some people in the legislature who disagree with that premise. I think that the House has made it a priority. Well, I know the House has made it a priority, at least since Speaker White took office, and I think we're going to continue working to get that passed. Surprisingly, you would not believe, other than PERS, the second thing I hear from constituents about is online gaming. Other than PERS, I hear more about online gaming from constituents than anything else. It is shocking the number of people in our state who want to get that passed. I believe, of course, we have a great casino industry on the coast. They do a lot of good.
The casinos are big business, but they seem to have undue influence on maybe it's the state Senate side and blocking this from getting done. And I understand wanting to protect some of the table game revenue that the casinos bring in, but the online gaming is just making it more difficult and likely driving online or sports wagering underground.
Right. And it's not all the casinos. I will say that we have some casinos that support the program. It's 1 or 2 casinos that might be a little hesitant to allow this to pass. But you're right about the underground system we've got right now. The online sports betting is happening in Mississippi. Whether you want to admit it or not, people are spending money that's not being taxed and not going into the coffers to alleviate any type of spending we've got. It's happening. We're just not doing it legally. And, it's kind of ludicrous to think that we can't get this passed here.
State Rep Jansen Owen, again, apologies for the time confusion, but it's good to see you, and thank you for coming in. I'd love to spend some more time with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, and let me know if you need anything else.
And Southern Miss to the top. Let's see how they do in baseball. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert. He'll be back tomorrow here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Grover Norquist from Americans for Tax Reform will join me next segment. We'll talk about the big, beautiful bill. It actually seems to be coming to fruition.
What you swore the time before.
Hey, this is Bob.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Great to be here. Thank you for letting me sit in for Gerard today on SuperTalk, Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands. You can find me on X at Scott Sands Media. Gerard and Richard live tomorrow in Lowndes County for the unveiling of the Cinco Megasite. It's a new development project. Huge economic impact for the Golden Triangle. It's brought to you by the Golden Triangle Development Link. And on Friday, Gerard will be at Itawamba Community College in Fulton for their spring graduation. A lot of great things happening at ICC, and you'll hear how they're the future of Mississippi's workforce. Tomorrow, Friday, here on Super Talk Mississippi. Grover Norquist is joining me now. He's the president of Americans for Tax Reform, ATR.org. Grover, it's always great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Scott. Good to be with you.
So it looks like the big, beautiful bill is going to happen, or at least a majority of it. I had a lot of doubts, and Freedom Caucus may still raise their hand and throw a flag on the play, but it's looking pretty good as of today.
It does. The House Ways and Means Committee, Chairman Smith really did a good job in putting this together. It's going to go to the floor. It'll be discussed. There will be some changes, no doubt, in the U.S. House floor. Then it goes to the Senate. Here's what is playing. There wasn't a tax increase in it. Some people had been pushing for a tax increase on the top brackets because they thought that's cute politics. It's what George Herbert Walker Bush did to get himself thrown out of the White House. And they didn't make permanent in the House bill, the House committee bill, the full expensing for business investment and the full expensing for R&D spending and the full expensing for interest in certain investments. All three of those will be made permanent when it goes over to the Senate. So there's an understanding both from the House and the Senate leadership. If you're a businessman, you wonder, those three are very important. They are very important. They will be made permanent on the Senate side. So there's still some things to be decided. At the end of the day, no Republican is going to vote against this bill. And because to stop the bill is to cut in half people's per child tax credit, to cut in half the standard deduction, to raise rates on every single American who pays income taxes. Nobody wants to be responsible for that. Everybody has their own list of things they'd really like to see in the bill. Understood, but there can be a lot of disappointed people. Here's the good news. In the next year, there'll be two more of these bills where we can go in and anything that was left out, anything that you thought was going to be in the sandbox, could have got pushed out of the sandbox because there wasn't space, can get into the next bill. There's a bus coming by twice more. You can get in the second bus or the third bus.
The most critical part of this is making the Trump tax cuts from 2017 permanent. Otherwise, we face perhaps the largest tax increase in American history and impacts every American family. This also includes, I believe, an inflation adjustment for at least 1 year, which will also help stimulate the economy and reduce everybody's tax burden as well.
Yeah, there are a number of little things that have been talked about for a while that are in the bill. It is a fine bill as written. It will be better when the floor has worked it and the Senate has gone on, particularly making it completely permanent on some of the most pro-investment parts of the bill. And again, we will have two more bites at this apple before the next election.
Explain the child tax credit. It's a $2,000 CTC, permanently extended. How does that impact our wallets for families?
Well, whatever your tax payment is per child, you get a tax credit. Take $2,000. If you owed $4,000 and you have a child of the right age, you drop that $4,000 to $2,000, and you pay taxes on $2,000, not $4,000, and that's true for each child you have. And it just basically says if you've got a number of children, they don't start taxing you at one rate. They take the income limit up higher, recognizing the cost of children.
So is this part of the president's idea of a baby bonus? Is that part of this child tax credit plan?
There's been a per child tax credit for quite some time in the tax code. So really it's a continuation of that policy.
So let's also talk about some of the other tax cuts
that checks to have babies historically hasn't worked. It's not what motivates people, evidently. But they've tried it in France. They've tried it in Hungary. Not really.
So no tax on tips, overtime wages, Social Security checks. That seems to be happening as well.
I think those will be put for 2 to 4 years out into the future. I mean, it'll start now, but won't necessarily be made permanent yet. We will see how that moves forward, and we will learn more about how much it quote unquote costs the government to do those things because they're new project lines. But yes, those will most likely be in the bill and will be helpful.
How do all of these tax cuts help to stimulate the economy? Obviously, we all want to pay lower taxes. We all want to keep more of the money that we're earning. But by reducing taxes long term, it does benefit the country.
Well, it certainly does. For starters, you spend your money more wisely than the government spends it.
Really?
There's very little waste, fraud, and abuse when you write the family checkbook. When the federal government is printing checks on a computer, there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. And one of the things that the DOJ committees were looking at, they were finding the beginnings of these problems. There's a lot to go after. The amount of money wasted during COVID, sent incorrectly, stolen, is in the trillions of dollars. So we need to be serious about reducing that waste and that fraud. Very important step in the right direction is to reduce the fraud in both tax credits that people get sent money for and actual spending pieces of legislation, checks written.
We're talking to Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, ATR.org. I'm glad you mentioned DOJ because this is where some of the Freedom Caucus members may throw a flag. It's on spending cuts. A lot of pushback, even from Republicans, to actually follow through with the recommended cuts that DOJ is making. I saw a post earlier that $89.3 trillion in federal spending is projected over the next decade. The House plan is $1.2 trillion reduction. That's a 1.5% cut. And the Senate side is a $4 billion reduction against $521 billion in increases. So are we really making any progress on cutting spending? I mean, the problems I've got with the big, beautiful bill are not the tax cuts. Those are great. Those are needed. We need to make the Trump tax cuts permanent. But when we continue to increase the national debt, which I realize the debt ceiling needs to be raised for fiscal reasons, but we're not cutting the spending to offset a lot of these tax cuts.
No, we cut taxes in order to get economic growth. We cut spending because that's the deadweight cost of government. How much does the government cost? Total spending is the cost of government. It doesn't really matter very much whether you pay for that total spending by taking money in taxes or borrowing it. It's gone from the real economy. You don't, to raise taxes to lower the debt doesn't change the cost of government. It just is how you end up collecting it. We need the government to spend less as a percentage of the entire economy. We want it to be not 24% of the economy, but 20 and 15% of the economy, a smaller percentage. The cost of government is how much spending as a percentage of the economy is done by the government. And anybody who likes to claim to be for spending restraint, I have to tell you, the people I hear whining about it most, I never see them out working to build the case and to get more people to support it. They just sit in a room and whine that somebody else hasn't gotten the votes for it. These people are not getting the votes in the Senate, which is where you need them, and in order to cut the budget. And by the way, for policy changes, law changes, you need 60 votes. You cannot do this in reconciliation.
No.
One of the gun groups, Gun Owners of America, is complaining that while the Republicans are eliminating the tax on suppressors, noise suppressors, or silencers. $200 was put in to be annoying. We're getting rid of that. They go, well, why don't you just get rid of the underlying law? Because you can't, under reconciliation, change laws. You can change numbers. The fine goes from 200 to 0, but but you can't change the law. And sometimes the congressmen, you wonder what they're doing. They complain about something. Why don't we do X? And the answer is because we don't have 60 votes, because this cannot be done in reconciliation. And I really wish that they would put some time and effort into getting additional votes from other members, talking to other senators, writing articles, being on talk radio, educating the American people on why certain spending cuts can be made. That would be helpful. Whining about it at this point is a little late.
Yeah, the downside of that is when you try to reach across the aisle to find some Democrat votes, you're accused of being a rhino or squishy on the issues, and nobody wants to be seen that way either. Grover, it's great to see you. Thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to have you on. President of Americans for Tax Reform. Follow him on X at Grover Norquist, ATR.org. Grover, we'll talk soon.
Good to be with you.
Thank you, sir. I'm Scott Sands, SuperTalk Mississippi. It's Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Is the Southern accent disappearing? How y'all doing? I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibert. He'll be back tomorrow here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Rhino, do I have a Southern accent in your opinion?
Not really, no. You might have some little distinct uses in certain words, but not the overall accent.
So I don't think I've ever really had like a bad Southern drawl. Not that there's anything I love a Southern accent. Jansen Owens, who was just in here, had a great Southern accent. I was born in Alabama and went to high school in Mississippi, lived in Mississippi for years. I don't think I ever, and I've done radio since I was in high school, and maybe that's why, but I don't think I ever really had a noticeable Southern accent. I certainly use Southern words and phrases from time to time, and when I go back to visit friends, sometimes I'll leave with a little bit more of a Southern accent or a New Orleans drawl from time to time. But there's a study out that says the Southern accent is fixing to go away.
I don't think I know anyone that has a clear, distinctive Southern, what I would consider from watching TV years ago, the traditional Southern accent.
I don't think I have an accent, but when I talk to other people, they say that I sound very country. They can't figure out where I'm from.
People in Georgia do have an accent compared to like people in New York.
I think a little bit will be lost, a little bit of that Southern charm, the sweet tea sitting on the porch, waving at your neighbors.
Yeah, see, that's a Southern accent to me, and there is a certain charm to it, right? And the reason why, according to the study, is that nearly 6 million people have moved into the South since the 2020s, 4 times the combined total of the nation's 3 other regions. So more Yankees are moving into the South, which is diluting the Southern accent. Do you notice that at all when you're out?
Not really. I mean, there are fewer people, trying to get the right word here. There are fewer people that I hear in music or see on TVs or movies that have a real Southern accent and not that exaggerate, because that's the problem. When you're trying to put on a Southern accent,
oh, it's horrible.
Your best bet is to just use your normal accent, but be a little lazier with how you use your mouth, your jaw, your lips, and your tongue. Just got to be a little lazier. The problem people have is they try to emphasize it and push it out instead of just letting it happen, and they wind up with that over-saturated, syrupy, too much oomph on it, and it doesn't quite sound right. It's just a little too hard.
When these actors and actresses are trying to portray a Southern accent, just let it come naturally. It's even worse when somebody in the movies or TV tries to sound like they're from New Orleans. There was a character on NCIS New Orleans, a show that I used to watch. The guy, I can't think of what his character name was or what his actor name was. He's actually from Alabama, but the whole New Orleans accent was done horribly and over-exaggerated. And the last time I was in New Orleans myself, I noticed that some of the, want to call it a Yad accent, has diminished a little bit. I think there have been, so many people left after Katrina, and now you've got new people moving into New Orleans and other parts of the South that maybe it is diluting a little bit, but I think the heritage and the culture is surviving. And I don't think the Southern accent is going to disappear completely. I don't think we're in danger of that, because it does it's a factor of your environment. So if you grow up with a family that's got a Southern accent, a Southern drawl, you're more likely to pick it up than if you don't. So maybe over time it will lessen, but I don't think it could ever possibly go away. And I certainly hope that it doesn't. It's part of what makes the South, and part of that charm that that family in that audio clip was just talking about. I mean, it is that Southern charm of being able to talk about sweet tea on the porch in the afternoon.
The irony of it is the kind of negative connotation that's associated with the Southern accent. You hear a Southern drawl, and a lot of people not from the South would presume or even assume that you might be slightly slower, you might not have as much of an education, or you might not have this or that. They might think slightly negatively of you, but those same people would consider, say, a posh British accent as being just the most refined, where
Right.
if you take that British accent and you just lazy it up a little bit, it's the perfect Southern accent, because the Southern drawl and Southern pronunciation of English is the closest to the King's English in American vernacular.
That's what we need to get rid of, is the stereotypes and not the accent itself.
Right.
At the end of the day. Gerard's going to be back tomorrow. He'll be in Lowndes County for the unveiling of the Cinco Mega Site, brought to you by the Golden Triangle Development Link. And then Friday, Gerard will be at Itawamba Community College for their spring graduation. A lot going on. You can find me on X and social media. Look me up at Scott Sands Media on X. And I will be back filling in for Richard on Friday morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate everybody at TeleSouth and SuperTalk Mississippi. Rhino, thank you. Have a great Wednesday. And I'll talk to you again on Friday morning. SuperTalk Mississippi News and Fox News coming up at the top of the hour.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.